Welcome to 825, The Weekly. I'm your host, Julio Gonzalez. And in today's news, the 10th Congressional District is heating up. Desiree Tims and Mike Turner accuse each other of campaign finance violation. Yes, they're both accusing each other. In this WWE-type brawl, they are throwing words and they are not mincing any of them. Is it getting crazy? Absolutely, and we'll go over all of it with you today. But today we remember a local legend, Dwight the Blur Anderson. He went to USC and transferred to Kentucky. Later on would go on to the Washington Bullets and the Denver Nuggets and have a spectacular NBA career. But we also remember him around here, helping out our youth, helping out young prospects in the Dayton area, and he's going to be missed greatly. For now, and we head over to our correspondent Natasha, and she's going to go over Turner v. Tims.
Welcome back to 825 The Weekly. I'm one of your hosts, Natasha, and today we're going to talk about Congressman Mike Turner and Desiree Tims, and we're also going to talk about the state representatives. So Congressman Mike Turner and the Democratic nominee Desiree Tims are in a tight race for Dayton's 3rd District. Congressman Turner has been slandering Desiree Tims by saying that she has illegally used campaign funds, as she does get a legal salary from the Ohio Democratic Party. He continues to run ads about who donates to Tims' camp. Tims acknowledged that she accepted salary from the Ohio Democratic Party, and in a written response, she said, "While these kind of dirty political attacks are exactly what we expect from career politicians like Mike Turner, after nearly a quarter of a century in elected office, it's sad that he has nothing positive to offer the people of our area, only smear attacks and distortions." Meanwhile, the state representative 39th district is up for grabs as Willis E. Blackshear Jr. faces off against John Farrell Mullins III. So what's a state representative, for those who don't know? So in the Ohio General Assembly, each citizen is represented by a state representative and a state senator. The state's divided into 99 House districts and 33 Senate districts. State representatives listen to the concerns of their constituents and they speak for them. So they develop solutions to the needs of their district through legislative action, so like rules and things. State representatives work together, balancing the best interests of each state district. Willis Blackshear Jr., if you want to learn more about him, go to www.blackshearforstaterep.com/about. And if you want to learn about John Farrell Mullins III, you can go to ballotpedia.org/John Farrell Mullins. And if you look on your screen now, you're going to see a graphic of all the other local representatives and what they represent as far as their ballot issues and who's running, so you can see competition. And now we're going to bring in some of our other colleagues to talk about more about Desiree. Welcome back to 825 The Weekly. I'm Natasha, and these are my hosts, Mark and Nikki. And one of the topics that we're going to talk about today is the controversial race between Mike Turner and Desiree Tims. So the basics, we both know that they're running in the 3rd District. It's a really, really tight race. And Mike Turner is accusing Desiree Tims of stealing money from the Democratic Party and misusing funds. And Mike Turner in general is a hot mess. So let's talk about the issues, get into it. What do you think?
Well, I don't think that she can steal money that was given to her.
That's a point, because Desiree Tims is employed by the National Democratic Party. She's getting a salary, which is legal. That's very legal. So she works for them.
We don't know what she does. Don't know what she does exactly. She's campaigning for a seat on Congress. Mm-hmm. She does not currently have a seat.
And he's basically slandering her so she doesn't get this seat. That's what's going on?
Correct. There's all types of commercials. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, Mike Turner spent like $250,000 last year on trips and dinner around the world. Mm-hmm. That's supposed to use campaign money, so you know. Here we go.
Around the world?
Around the world. Around the world. Lovely. Crab legs.
And he's what?
In Bali.
He's a congressman?
Congressman, yeah.
Ohio.
For Ohio. People love him.
He was where?
He should be eating
all over the world.
Somewhere in a field.
I don't understand.
All over the world.
But,
I don't understand.
Okay, so why is it such a tight race, and why is it so important, the Senate seat that they're fighting for?
I know Desiree Tims specifically, she wants to flip the seats because they've been mainly Republican since, I want to say, like the 19-something years. So she wants to flip the seats. Mike Turner, can't speak for him. His issues, he's still fighting for a Delphi issue in 09, and people still have not gotten their money back. So I can't speak to what he does. I know Desiree Timms has a lot of she has a lot of progressive issues that she wants to work on. There's a lot. There's LGBTQ. She wants to help people with working wages. The main one I know that I probably like the best is her with the Wright Pat Air Force Base. She wants to do a collaboration to bring more jobs to the area with STEM students. I appreciate that because we don't have a lot of tech, and tech brings in money to the area. Mike Turner, though, that's a different story.
Yeah, Mike Turner feels like Ohioans should be devoting their energy and resources into natural gas exports.
Oh yeah, the oil.
Yeah, he feels like our future is in exporting oil, while Desiree Timms, she feels like we should be focusing our resources on wind and solar energy. So I feel like that's very interesting too in this race.
What do you think, Mike?
What do I think about, what exactly are you asking me?
What do you think about Mike Turner specifically? We can talk about Desiree.
I'm not a fan of either candidate, to be completely honest. I'm not a fan of the system, you could say.
Okay.
So,
What specifically do you not value about Mike Turner, though?
well, Mike Turner being the incumbent means that everything that is an issue today, he's had it because he's been the way in power. Desiree Timms is trying to get in power, but I don't know what she gets paid for. And that bothers me. That's the gist of what I think of both candidates.
What do you specifically think about Mike Turner as far as him running, his issues?
I think Uncle Mike is outdated. I think he's a little bit old and he should start napping. We should go and let Desiree take over. That's just my personal opinion. I feel like from what I read on his little website, which is turner.house.gov, and it has like all his little issues. From what I read, his main priority in our community has been Wright-Patterson Air Force Base and bringing a lot of money in there and keeping the money there and protecting the money that's funneled into that. Whereas Desiree, she's trying to take people from our inner city school districts and funnel them into the Wright-Pat money, so I like that. Him, on the other hand, he's trying to, like, from what I read, it seems like he's trying to consolidate our wealth in one little place, and I don't really like that. He cares a lot about the military, and he's against Obamacare. He's trying to reform that, which I don't understand. I would have to see his plan to understand, like, why he's so against it, which it doesn't state what he's going to do better than Obamacare. And he thinks that, the immigration one, that was interesting. Very Trumpish. He says that he wants a reform that provides no amnesty for those who have entered our country illegally. I think that's kind of harsh.
Zero amnesty?
Yeah, zero. None at all. He wants to fully secure our border, keep our citizens safe. He wants to protect the rights of legal immigrants that we already have here in our country, but he does not want to unfairly reward those who came unlawfully, which kind of sounds like he'll do anything to get them out, and I don't really like that.
The lane was so anyway. That's a whole nother
Yeah, like
subject.
you fighting for stuff that I don't think you should be really focused on that much.
Most of the issues that we have with him are issues that we have with older politicians,
Okay.
specifically older white male politicians who fail to see certain issues.
He's very mediocre to me, and his policies are outdated because he's been in Congress for this long and hasn't made any change. And I know we talked about he was for gun reform a little bit after we had the mass shooting, and then once Trump came to town, he changed his tune. So that's an issue for me as well. One more thing
He's
that
on the leash.
gross. One more thing that Desiree does, she has Fighting for Our Families, so she wants to make sure that Dayton has like federal resources and investments to help families recover. So after we had the tornado and the shootings, she wants to make sure we have those resources, which is really important because when the tornadoes happened, I know that it was young people like myself, Day Young Black Professionals, other organizations. We were on the ground like 2 days after it happened. That's before we even got any inkling of federal help.
Mm-hmm.
It was people helping people.
Oh yeah.
So that's important to me. That's vital. She has a lot of different views on healthcare, education, jobs, and the economy, but they all are centered around change. And I really like her because she's a politician that comes from the west side of Dayton, and she looks like us. That's one issue I've had with politics. Nobody's looked like us.
And looking like us isn't the only thing that I like about her. Because I'm not going to say that I'm a fan of either candidate, but when it comes to Dayton, Ohio specifically, she went to Dunbar. So
that holds a lot of weight because we have a lot of politicians who don't look like us, who come from places like Oakville and Centerville and want to infiltrate. And if you don't look like us and you don't know the issues, you've never been West Dayton, how can you as an incumbent help the citizens?
And just based on paperwork and studies that, I mean, I'm not going to say studies about in general, but recently with the COVID funds that we've gotten, it's a good picture of the way that they distribute money in the city of Dayton. Because they said that they gave Dayton money, but when you look at the breakdown of it, they give money to Beaver Creek.
Mm-hmm. We didn't have any PPE for a while.
Like
I just want to throw that out there too.
The greater Dayton area does not generally speak about Dayton, Ohio, the inner city. They're usually speaking about the suburbs, the surrounding suburbs. That's why they call it the greater Dayton
That's
area.
what Mike Turner's been doing, consolidating our wealth.
Outside of Dayton.
Yes.
Because these cities have their own cities.
I think it's going to be just because everything that we have riding on this election. We're in the middle of a pandemic. We've had racial uprising, police brutality, a lot of cases with women not having positions in power. So I think there's a lot riding on this. And with Desiree being young, being African American, being from the inner city, and also just knowing Dayton, I think that she's a really strong candidate. She can flip it. Mike Turner, on the other hand, his scare tactics and ads is outdated.
Well, if you guys want to check out the issues, you can look at Desiree Timms and what she stands for at timsforcongress.com. And then Mike Turner, you can find his opinions and how he feels about life on turner.house.government.
But please vote. Please.
Please, just vote.
Begging you to vote.
And now back to Natasha.
Once again, you can buy as many raffle tickets as you want. You don't have to get just one.
I was the host for the day, just walking around making sure everybody was good, everybody taken care of, shouting out the events, the vendors' names and everything. We did a $5 raffle thing that somebody took home a 50-inch TV. It was great, man. It was great. I think it's just so we can keep the black dollar in the black community, man. There's so many black businesses that we can support that we don't even know about, whether they be our friends, whether we don't know them. We can support everything. We buy expensive clothes that we don't even, that money going nowhere near our community. So let's keep that money in our community.
My first thought was, let me do something just to ensure that this shit happens, bro. So I want to do something for the city, bro. We done been through way too fucking much for us to not support one another to the extent that we need to. So that's what Salem Avenue is to me, bro.
Couple questions. First thing I'd like to get into is what does voter suppression look like to you guys? That is a big term that's going around right now. You see it all the time in the media, on Twitter, on social, all types of social media. So first, let's start off by saying, like, what does voter suppression mean? Like, what is it? If you would like to go first.
Well, I mean, I feel like
I'll share words.
Yes, ladies first.
Voter suppression is just the suppression of voting. So there are specific tactics and manipulations that are used to get people to not vote. For example, earlier this year, and I believe this was like it started in August, there were certain mailboxes being removed in different states to prevent people from casting their ballot. In Virginia, it was the last day of voting, last Friday, and all of a sudden, on the very last day that people were supposed to vote, the whole online system crashed. So examples like that are voter suppression, where you're just suppressed from voting. There are certain technicalities and certain situations that keep you from having your voice heard. They're not individualistic; like these are systemic.
Yeah.
Martin.
I would agree, and I would say that the idea of suppressing votes, I feel like it's deeper than just not letting people vote. It's more so like the effect that your votes have.
Yeah.
Like, this isn't the best example, but technically Donald Trump didn't win the popular vote. So if we want to talk about everybody's vote mattering, like the politicians would have you think, then technically Hillary Clinton should be president. But we have what's called an electoral college, so when we talk about voter suppression,
Yeah.
Can I say something about that? Hillary Clinton should she have been president? Because she did the same thing that Donald Trump did.
I don't like
she
Hillary
didn't.
Clinton. I'm just saying.
She didn't actually win the primary election. Like she didn't really win the primary election. She got votes from other states. She lost popular elections in like Wisconsin and Minnesota. I think, I'm not sure. Don't quote me on that. But they end up giving those electoral votes towards Hillary Clinton regardless. They did the same thing with Joe Biden this year. So like the term voter suppression like kind of pisses me off because it's like it's another term. America likes to do a lot of labeling, and voter suppression is another like term or word or phrase that I'm hearing a lot, and it makes me mad because like people feel like voter suppression is only happening right now, and that's not true. There's gerrymandering.
Which can be even bigger than voting, to be honest. That affects how you vote and who's allowed to even voice their opinion on voting.
What year were we allowed to start voting? 1960, 65?
Yeah. No, 1865.
For women, this is specifically only the 100th year that we're allowed to vote.
No, it's not. It's not your 100th year.
It's our, yes.
No, he's saying white women.
Not yours. It had nothing to do with
Okay, be specific now.
I'm just saying.
Come on. Let us know.
But even the voter rights bill that they made after they gave us the right to vote, because we need two things for people to get it. 1965 voter, whatever you want to call it, because I know what that stuff is, but it's like, it's been updated and been getting updated since 2011 as recently. So it's like, voter suppression is really what, in what eyes? Because still for us, for black people, what's good, bro?
Yeah.
Still for us, for black people, our right to vote or our voter suppression, so-called, is still like being updated till now. Like, even if you want to get into that, they don't allow felons to vote into some states, and we all know black people get felonies for walking down the street. So it's like,
it's a deeper issue than most people want to make it.
Yeah.
Suppressing votes is about your voice being heard, but whose voice is heard?
It's about who's mainly affecting, and the cause and effect of that is a dice game. It's not just about suppressing votes. It's about the cause of whose votes and voices are we suppressing, and the after effects and the power that will hold.
And that comes from the system.
They're only oppressing our votes, and really, like, not oppressing, but suppressing our votes. But in reality, they didn't want us to vote in the first place. So that, like, brings me all the way back to the word voter suppression. How do you suppress somebody that you don't want to vote?
If we, like, to really talk about it from a historical perspective, like, as far as black people voting, at one point we weren't even citizens. Like, it took a lot for us to even be considered citizens here, and at this point, with what just happened with George Floyd and everything else that's going on in the country, you could make the argument that black people are still second-class citizens.
You can make the argument that we still aren't citizens because there's still, like, clauses that they wrote in there that states if you're a felon or something like that, that you are not a citizen.
Yeah, like, we should look up what year they said that we weren't 3/5 anymore. It might shock people what year that was. Like, to hear when we were actually determined in the Constitution that we weren't 3/5 of a person anymore.
So let's talk more so locally, because this, I mean, if we want to talk about voices counting and everything, everybody gets all, I want to say like energized, or they want to go crazy about when the president election is, when it's really like it's an election every 2 years and it's an election every 4 years. So how do you guys feel about the local elections around in Dayton? And then even some, I think like the probate judge is not running against anybody. Like there's spots that nobody is running against anybody. I want to say like city commissioner is another thing. Don't quote me on that once again, but there are a lot of positions that are open that people aren't even running against. So how do you guys feel about local elections, especially in the Dayton area?
Well, I feel like the people that are in power right now, or I'm trying to think of the right way to put it, but it doesn't seem like this is a good example. When we were in school, we had a class president that was announced to us my senior year. Nobody even voted for this guy though. It was that unimportant to us, to the point where when we got brought to this assembly and they told us who our class president was, we didn't have any idea that we even had a class president, because this whole process was so foreign to us. It had nothing to do with us.
Right.
So when we talk about people not running for offices, it's a probate judge. It's a question that you're going to hear from people.
Right.
Because they're going to be like, well, a judge for here? Like, what kind of courts are there? People don't understand the entirety of the system.
That was what I was about to say. I don't think for the local elections there's enough education behind it. It's one thing to, we have all types of campaigns from different activists and local people running saying vote, 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 but we don't even know. We need to have meetings about, well, what is a probate judge? What's the electoral college? What are all these things? We don't break down the issues. We don't talk about why voting is important besides not shaming your ancestors, which I don't like for a specific reason.
Hey,
Yeah,
go ahead.
I don't like that.
Now what?
People always say, "Don't your ancestors died for the right to vote."
Hey,
for a lot of things.
Hey, stop ancestor shaming, bro. Ain't nobody trying to hear that.
That's not.
Ain't nobody trying to hear that.
That's not even appropriate. That has
They
nothing.
died
No.
for your right.
We
to
didn't
vote.
even
That's
have
a
the right to
bold
vote. They were
statement.
still 3/5 of a person. We're still considered 3/5 of a person.
Right.
Don't do your ancestors like that.
My ancestors died because they wanted to be American.
And that goes into the phrase that we are not our ancestors. We're not our ancestors because our ancestors overthrew our slave masters. But we'll talk about that.
Depending on what you're talking about.
And we would never. But as far as local elections, I just don't think that there's enough education around it. If we sat down, especially with people who are young and educated like us, if we said, hey, let's have a meeting in a place where everyone knows, and if you're uneducated, like you don't know what the electoral college is, you don't know your local constituents, let's have a meeting where we can sit down and talk to it in terms that people understand. Because when we talk about voting, there's a lot of people that are kind of, they're black, but they're elitist. So there are only certain black people who know what the issues are. And you have to meet people where they are if you want people to get this mass voting turnout. We need to meet people where they are because half these people don't know what a probate judge is. And that's no shame, but I'm saying that it's on us to educate each other because no one else is going to.
It's systemic.
It's systemic. And it's a lack of access and resources. And we can't continue to allow that happening and then question, well, why didn't people vote? Because people don't know. People don't know about the electoral college.
People don't know how the city commissioner affects them. People don't know how the probate judge affects them. Like we're not taught this stuff in school, so
You don't know how it affects you until you're in court.
Until you're in court, caught up for something that you could have avoided if you knew your rights and how everything works. That's why I love that Yellow Pains, the local rapper, he created a song about voting, and he did a remix with 7 Streeter. He's been everywhere. I appreciate things like that because it's something that the youth can relate to.
Yes.
You talk about youth voting and people our age, it's something people can relate to. Like, wow, he broke it down to something that's catchy and I can understand it. We need to have more of that if we're going to talk about voting because
He really went to a chalkboard in the video.
yeah.
that's fire.
They actually showed that video when I was working at the elementary school last year when it initially came out, and the kids loved the song and it's very informative. Like the history teacher was geeking about it. So
that's the stuff that we need because historically in Dayton, when every time voting season comes around, all I see is please vote, please vote, please vote, 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 vote. It's your civic duty, but people don't understand about civic duty and civic engagement. It's not broken down. You have to meet people where they are. If we hosted something at Holy Grounds or even like a club on Rainy Saturday said, hey, come learn about all your local constituents and what this means and how it can really affect you, I bet we have a better voter turnout.
Yeah.
It's not just about voting, why and how.
And just telling people to go vote, I feel like it's another form of voter suppression because your vote is supposed to be your voice. So if you're hearing to vote from a person who's tied to a party who's trying to get your vote, they're not going to tell you what you need to know in order for you to make an educated decision for yourself. You're going to make the decision that they want you to make because they're the ones that told you to vote. So it's like a salesman coming to you, like they're trying to sell a car. So like they're trying to pitch it to you because that's exactly what they're doing while they're pitching you the idea of vote for them.
So lately, let's get into some more some national news. Ice Cube, let me do this again. Ice Cube has been taking a lot of criticism for his contract with Black America. A lot of people have been talking about him and picking sides with Donald Trump, picking sides, I'll put that in quotation marks, and not talking to the Democratic Party and Joe Biden, which, by the way, Joe Biden did a battle rap commercial, which Ice Cube going to talk to Donald Trump and him saying like, hey, he's using you. And then a day later, Joe Biden drops a commercial with battle rappers. I'm a battle rap fan. I love battle rap. I'm glad they got put on that platform, but oh my God, bro, why do you have to pander so hard? Is it that serious? Like, is life that serious that you had to go and grab? And people have been saying to me like, oh, that was Biden's team that did that. That wasn't Biden, but he still had to approve it. He put his name on it, so I'm not trying to hear that. But anyways, what are your thoughts on Ice Cube and his tactics with the contract with Black America and him talking to the Republican Party, him reaching out to the Democratic Party? Where do you guys stand with it? How do you feel about it?
I just feel like we have this whole obsession with like celebrity culture, and we have not learned yet that the elite will not save us. Because if you notice, every single year there's one token Black famous person, whether they be in media, sports, rap, that always that goes to these extremes. We can talk about that. Oh, I thought you said kinda. You said kinda. Yeah, for sure. But we have not learned yet that the elite will not save us. I just think this is a stunt. It's just a political tactic. This has no bearings on who we should vote for and what the real issues are. This is kind of when they say, oh, distractions, this is a distraction. The elite will not save us. Celebrity and political affiliations will not save us. They have nothing to do with us. That's not what you should be focused on. That's how I feel about it.
I mean, that's a good way to sum it up because when they talk about plans for the African American community, like did Donald Trump have one?
What plans?
Or was it Joe Biden that had
Joe
one?
Biden's out here battle rapping. What plans?
I mean, but
Joe Biden claims to have a plan. Joe Biden, and I watched a lot of the Ice Cube interviews because he went on a whole like tour of trying to explain himself.
He shouldn't have to.
He really shouldn't. But Donald Trump put out the platinum plan. So this is what they did though. They put out the platinum plan like a month ago, and then it wasn't getting the attention that it deserved. So then one of Donald Trump's employees or somebody on his staff put out a tweet saying, "Thank you, Ice Cube, for helping us with the platinum plan." But if you read the platinum plan and you read the contract with Black America, they're not even similar. Like they're not even close. So for you to sit there and say, like, oh, this is what Ice Cube did. All you did was put that out there to get us to argue. And when I say us, I mean our people, our community. That's all you were trying to do was to gain, not gain, but put damn, what is the word that I'm looking for? Cause a dysfunction between us and our people.
It's a division tool, and that's why I said the elite will not save us because things like this happen all the time, and they're not important.
Well, we are as a country is real polarized.
Very polarized.
And we've never been more polarized than we are right now. When I was in school, they were explaining to me how the Hillary Clinton Donald Trump election was the most polarizing election in the history of the United States.
Right, because it's happening right now.
Grown from that. Like now it's 2020, and now we have Joe Biden who's doing battle raps, and Donald Trump who's working with Ice Cube. Like you see who the target demographic is for both of those little predicaments, incidents, whatever you want to call them. They're not nothing good.
It's ghetto at the end of the day, and also understand that when we talk about, because the platinum package sounds like you're upgrading to an iPhone. I don't know. Why would you even do that? What was the reason?
The platinum package is for Black people.
The platinum package for Black people. The platinum plan.
Don't say it wrong.
Like the bronze, silver, the gold, and the platinum plan. If also you have to pay attention because the media will use certain language around certain parties and certain races for as divisive tactics. I can say that because I'm a journalist, so I see it every single day. You have to pay attention to the language that they use.
And the headlines. Stop just
And
reading
the
the
headlines. Read the article and please read the dates before you share it.
Dates are important.
Dates are super important. But if you listen to when they talk about we have a plan for Black America, when you ask them about specifics, there are none. It's very general. Because even if they know that if they say, oh yeah, we have a plan to improve Black America and the plight of Black folks, that's going to get people going because they never heard it before. We have to stop taking things at face value. And when we get constituents in office, incumbents in office, we have to hold them accountable. That's even local, like with Nan Whaley. I'm talking to her for behalf of Elevate Dayton about the 5-point plan. What are you doing specifically to combat police brutality and over-policing in Dayton? Specifically. I don't want to hear that.
You just segue into what I wanted to talk about next. What are your thoughts on police reform or defunding the police? Because once again, those are two words of labeling that people are fighting over right now. Like on the conservative side or the far right, once again, I'm labeling because that's what we do in America. The far right is, they don't agree with defunding the police. Police reform sounds better for them. Defunding the police is more so of a leftist side. So where do you guys stand on these issues and on these two words, or what, and what does that look like for you?
Mark, go ahead. I know you're itching to say something.
Honestly, it's a lot to unpack with this kind of question. Like, building off of the last, what were we just talking about?
We was talking about the contract with Black America.
Nice.
All right, well, it kind of is a good segue into this because we as Black people, I would say, are political prisoners here since we were brought here as slaves and been forced to assimilate. That's the correct word, right? Assimilate to this culture because it wasn't our culture beforehand. We were brought here, forced to assimilate to the culture and fight for rights that most people consider human rights. We were considered 3/5 of a person, and the police force was originally the force used to catch those 3/5 of a person. So when we talk about police reform, Black people naturally have that history with the police. Like, it's not like we just don't like the police because the police are evil and they've always been beating on Black people, even though that is the truth, because that was kind of their job originally. Like, it wasn't to beat Black people, but we know that authority in 1776 they were not fond of African Americans, to say the least. So when we talk about defunding the police or trying to change the police, my only issue would be, where are we going to from this? Because people will want to say that it's going to be a different, more universal force, like everywhere, or I don't know exactly how they would want to do this. Like, how will we go forward without a police force?
I've been reading in certain countries because I've always said that police are not trained to deal with, if you notice in downtown Dayton, if you've ever had any interactions, they're not trained to deal with people who are mentally ill, and they're not trained to deal with homeless people. And I think that holds true the same as the general public. So when we say defund and reform the police, we have to investigate what that actually looks like. Like, what does a world without police look like? I would appreciate it instead of just sending the police to an encounter. Let's say there was a person who was mentally ill and they're having a crisis. Instead of sending the police, who's going to treat them like a criminal because they don't have that type of training, they should send a social worker or a licensed counselor to de-escalate the situation. So when we talk about police reform, I'm talking about putting other people who have active resources in those positions. We can still have courts, we can still hold people accountable for crimes, but it does not always need to be the police. Because if you notice, even if you've looked at protests that have happened this summer, most often when protesters are on TV or national, like CNN, they'll say that the police escalated the situation. They were peaceful. That happens here. That happens here. The police will often escalate the situation and the protesters are peaceful. That's what I'm saying. I actually believe in police abolition, so I'm a little more radical. But I also have a plan in place to think about how the world will look like without police and how we can move forward successfully. Police do not need to come to everything. They need to be trained. There's why there's social workers, there's why there's counselors, there's why there's psychologists, like people trained in rape crisis. They can handle those specific situations. The police often escalate it to something where it doesn't need to be, and here we are.
The police usually come to a situation with one job, and that's to probably arrest someone.
One job, to be aggressive, and not situation requires
it's
that.
Like, There's
I'm having a
security
mental
guards.
health crisis and I'm suicidal. Why are you arresting me? For what?
You don't need a security guard.
I don't need a security guard. I need someone who's trained in mental health to talk me down.
Yeah,
And we can talk about if I'm going to the hospital or if I'm going to get myself checked in.
Right.
Police only have one job, and it's to be aggressive and to find out where the crime is. But they're often the crime themselves.
And they're
That's the gag.
awfully fearful for their lives too.
Which it makes me
Awfully
mad.
fearful.
Listen,
They got the gun, the baton,
Listen,
the
listen,
the
listen.
taser.
The
they
thing
got
that
the
makes me,
mace.
the thing that makes me mad so much about this is, like, when you go in the army. Now, I'm not in the army. I don't have an army background, but I know people who are in the army. You have to have so much resistance over there, overseas, and doing things. But here, you don't get the same type of training.
Right.
And it irritates me that, you know, we as a country would rather follow rules overseas more than we would follow the rules over here in our own country.
You get shot over
The fear for your life thing makes me mad so much because it's like, okay, I always like taking stuff to sports. If somebody gets a concussion in sports, you play football, dude. You in fear for your life as a police officer? Isn't that what you signed up for?
Is that not what you were sworn in for?
there. Protect and serve.
Protect and serve.
That's like a firefighter.
Protect
That's like a
and-
firefighter going to a house on fire and be like,
I'm going to sit this one out. I'm
Yeah,
going my life
I'm
on
afraid
flames
for my
too
life.
much.
It's a fire. Oh my God.
so.
Make it make sense.
The thing with police reform for me, I think Colorado is always like 3-4 years ahead of somebody, or the rest of the country. Colorado rolled out a good police reform thing. It had a lot of the stuff that you were saying. Social workers should be on call. Social health workers should be on call. It should be more people prepared to handle and talk down situations instead of coming in, being an aggressor or blaming people. Or blaming a certain party or having certain judgmental things going on. We all, as black people, all have a story or difficult encounter where we felt like we could have lost our life to the police. Some only have one, some have 10. This is Dayton, Ohio at the end of the day, and if you talk to anybody who's living a different certain lifestyle, the one thing that I heard a lot back home is I lose more people to the police than I do people out here in the streets. Dayton is notorious for that. So it's like, to me, one, you shouldn't feel like you're in fear for your life when it's something you signed up for. Your life is on the line every day. You're a police officer. What are you scared for?
We shouldn't.
You didn't know this coming into the job? Like, so, but also with police reform too, we gotta start being more involved in police activity and being police officers and policing our own community. I don't know necessarily what that looks like now because I feel like police departments all over the country are too far gone, but I feel like more so of us have to find our way into these roles to where we can change some of these rules and change how things are being policed. And I don't feel like police officers should police any communities that they don't stay in. There's no way that random people should be getting shot. There's no way that I should be getting approached by the police, them thinking that I'm a drug dealer, just riding around the neighborhood because they don't know who I am.
Why are you a Centerville police officer
Sure.
policing me in West Dayton?
You're like,
You don't
why-
live here.
You have no connection to the neighborhood.
No.
Matter of fact, you probably feel some type of way because you don't live over here.
And that
You
adds
probably-
to you policing.
Yeah, you probably look at them crazy.
Your own biases and your own prejudices already add to you policing. Why are you policing me in West Dayton and you live in Centerville?
That's one thing. That's the thing that I hate about being here, specifically in Dayton, is that we act like there is no animosity between the inner city and the suburbs. We act like it doesn't exist until there's, let's say, a sporting event or something of the sort where we
Or
have
the
no choice.
KKK comes.
Or the KKK rally where the KKK is not from the inner city, but they were downtown Dayton. Interesting. Why would you even want to come to downtown Dayton? What point are you trying to prove?
Police reform
Right.
also, to me, looks like, and I don't mean to cut you off, but that the KKK is getting maced for protesting, just like we are getting,
Just
Black
like
Lives
we get tear
Matter
gassed.
are getting tear gassed and all that when they're protesting. So
They protected the KKK.
no, for a fact,
I remember. I didn't even go. I had nothing to do
I
with
saw
it.
pictures. I wasn't even here.
It was like, I heard it was like, it was no more than 15, and that's pushing it for the KKK members, but it was like 200 some people at least that came to protest them being there, and the police shielded the KKK.
They
It's the
said
best way
it
to put
was,
it.
well, when I say they, I'm talking about local government, and specifically NAN. The reason why she had to allow them anyway is because of Constitution and freedom of speech.
But she
She
That's
just
cool.
violated
She
that.
just denied them recently, though.
Yeah.
Which shows me that
She was able to now. I don't know the specifics on why she's able to now versus
It's
them.
different. It's different times. It's a lot more.
The Constitution didn't change. No laws changed. Nothing happened.
But
She
I
just
feel-
let them come back then. She didn't let them come this time because there was backlash, and we protested. We didn't protest. We weren't there, but people protested the KKK coming. So she said that's probably not going to work.
But they also wasted a lot of money last time when they came
Yeah,
too,
that's
because
why I
no
was-
one showed
yeah.
up. So
A
that's
lot of
probably
backlash.
that probably has something to do with it now.
I feel like that one before then was like them. Okay, we allowed you to do it, and now we got all these issues to where we can say no.
Yeah.
Like whereas the Constitution don't get in the way. Y'all had to spend too much money. We're in fear now. Like that something is gonna happen. We have to.
So I don't
Almost
blame
issues.
her for
Yeah.
that, but when we talk about local governments and local policing, everyone has to have a hand. We can even talk about how they hold meetings for constituents, about the school board stuff on days where most black folks gotta go to work, so we can't attend. That's systemic. It's not just us. There's systemic barriers that are holding us from saying what we need to say and acting as we need to act. But self-governance is important, and that goes back to even voting. We have to break it down and meet people where they are. We all have to hold a hand in this, everybody. I don't need you to have the loudest voice, I don't need you to be a community activist, but if you even have a conversation with your friends like, hey, there's something at Odd Bodies on Saturday if you're free, because I know you're not doing anything, let's go talk about voting so we can know how this works and we can have a hand. Or hey, if you know that felons can't vote, let's sign up people who are recently incarcerated and talk to them about voting so they can have their voice heard too. There's a way for everyone to have a hand, but I think it's the willingness, and especially we have to have more people like us talk about voting, because most of the people who are talking about voting don't look like us, or if they look like us, they have a certain degree or lifestyle, and they're not necessarily where we are.
I was about to say something. I'm gonna leave it alone.
Yeah.
It's called being an elitist Negro, but we'll get into that later.
Maybe they got paid for it.
We gonna close it
Maybe
on
they got
that
paid for
note.
what they said.
We gonna close it on that note. I'm gonna leave y'all with some final thoughts. Just be quick, real quick. Tell the people something that you wanna talk about or what's on your mind.
You can go.
It's ghetto here. It's really ghetto here, okay? But hey, if you don't know anything about voting, don't even worry about it. You can always slide my inbox and say, hey, what's a probate judge? Blase skip. I'll always link you to resources. Because when I say it's for us, by us, and it's us or nothing, it's really all of us or none of us. All of us or none of us. And I'm talking about people in West Dayton. I'm not even specifically talking about black folks, but if you believe in change, it's all of us or none of us. Get on board.
And I'm gonna say that my opinions, you could say, come from me wanting to run for mayor. Once upon a time, I graduated with a degree in political science, and I studied a couple other things too. So I'm not just talking for the sake of talking. But instead of running for mayor, I'm starting a church. So I'm gonna tell you to pray for everybody, because they need it.
Me on the other hand, not even on the other hand, just me personally, because I agree with both standpoints. Start putting pressure on your politicians, and we need to start doing more in our communities. And you don't got to be proper to do any of that. Break that mold. That has something to do with what you was talking about earlier, us falling into this system or the American way of living. It's not us.
It's whitewash. It's white supremacy.
I mean, literally, from the very beginning.
Be yourself, and we can change this little by little. It's been over 400 years, so it's gonna take us a while to get there. But we there, and we got all the resources. We got all the we got all the
Cultural?
we got all the cultural currency. So all this new stuff is coming in. We just got to do better as people, and we got to get in these positions to actual change. You can't change nothing from the outside looking in. So I'm gonna leave it with that. Thank you for watching 825 The Weekly, and we'll see you guys next week.